Hi, how are you today? We now come to the fourth and final cardinal point of the strategy compass. It is, of course, asset utilisation. It is difficult to overestimate the profit problems that accrue through poor asset utilisation. Indeed, PIMS found it was the biggest cause of profit problems in all firms. From a personal perspective, it's a little bit like having a mortgage that you can't afford. If you are in that unfortunate situation, you are crippled financially. We can decompose asset utilisation into three levels. First of all, the overall asset utilisation of the firm. How well is it using its total lot of assets? Then we can look at capacity utilisation, how much uptime is there? And finally, we can look at the productivity of the people in the firm. Poor asset utilisation is primarily caused by a very high spend on buildings and equipment. Very, very expensive buildings, very, very expensive equipment bought by the firm. Historically, the solution to this was to have limits on the amount of capital expenditure and to rent rather than buy, so that firms rented or leased their equipment and they rented their premises. This has been the ability to do this has been transformed by the internet, and in chapter 22 you can read how this is achieved, and we're likely to get even bigger savings in the future through cloud computing. Poor capacity utilisation, where the plant is not running 24/7, maybe it's running 12 hours a day, or maybe 8 hours a day, or maybe even less, like universities in the main, less than 8 hours a day. And we see the advent and the development of internet-based universities, which will have fantastic capacity utilisation and very, very low spending on buildings. The final contributing factor here is poor personal productivity, where new staff are added and the productivity levels, that is the sales per person, does not go up. That can be solved by assiduous management and through agglomeration through the internet, as you'll see in chapter 22. Here is the template of the strategy compass. The part that we are most interested in is asset utilisation. Let me make it a little bit bigger. And here we have asset utilisation in terms of the measures of how well it is being used. And I just want to say something about those two ratios, sales to total assets and sales to employees. A better measure would be value added in each of them rather than sales, because value added captures the value that the firm actually adds. But quite often that figure is unknown, especially if you're looking at a competing firm. So I've used sales as a surrogate for value added. And in terms of the decomposition, here we have overall asset utilisation will be measured by that. And the better that ratio, the more profitable the firm is likely to be. Here is capacity utilisation. The more uptime the firm has, the more profitable it is likely to be. And finally, we have the productivity of the people, sales per employees. The higher that figure, the better. It just remains for me once again to acknowledge that almost all the hardware and all the software is by Apple, and to give you some advice should you wish to buy the book. And it can be bought in two ways. First of all, if you go to lulu.com, who is the POD publisher, and search for Strategic Management for MBAs Black and White. Or alternatively, you could paste this link into your browser and that will take you to the storefront of the book. And it just remains for me to thank you for listening to this podcast and to hope that you listen to some more. And goodbye and thank you.